In the early hours of June 22nd, a highly targeted airstrike hit key nuclear facilities in Iran, marking a significant shift in the Middle East. The US and Israel launched a joint operation, Hammer of Midnight, targeting three vital Iranian nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The operation, which involved B-2 stealth bombers, bypassed China's high-altitude radar systems and Iran's S-400 air defense network, striking deep underground nuclear bunkers with precision. This action, which took place over thousands of miles, dealt a blow to China's long-standing strategic interests in the region. The most shocking detail came from a report after the attack. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed there were no signs of abnormal radiation at any of the three sites. This means the US military not only destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities, but also successfully prevented the spread of nuclear material, executing what could be described as a nearly ideal nuclear immunity strike, killing without contamination and cutting without damaging the environment. These developments left Beijing's strategic advisors speechless. Their most relied upon tools, detection of stealth aircraft, underground command centers, and the concept of absorbing nuclear radiation were all simultaneously destroyed in the aftermath of the strike on Iran. Sources say that upon learning of the rapid destruction of Iran's nuclear facilities and military command chain, CCP leader Xi Jinping was deeply shocked and alarmed. He quickly convened the Central Committee's Taiwan Work Leadership Group, directing them to assess how Israel's deep penetration plus decapitation strike tactics might be applied to the Taiwan Strait conflict. The most striking element to the world was not just the US military's technical capability, but also President Donald Trump's ability to deliver on his promises. Initially, during his campaign, Trump had stated that if China invaded Taiwan during his tenure, he would bomb Beijing, and if the Russia-Ukraine war occurred while he was in power, he would have bombed Moscow as soon as Russia invaded. Now, facing Iran, Trump acted decisively, deploying 7 B-2 stealth bombers to strike 3 nuclear facilities with precision. Chinese social media commentary on the moment reflected this. Iran says, "China, take note. I'm only demonstrating once," and "Iran has paved the way for China." The question that Xi Jinping fears most remains unresolved. Will he be the next leader targeted for decapitation? June 12th through the 13th, Israel's digital decapitation. While much of the attention focused on the explosive impact of Hammer of Midnight, the true warfare began on June 12th. Information and cyber attacks laid the groundwork for the operation's success. On the night of June 12th and into the early hours of June 13th, Israel launched its strike on Iran. What most people did not see and could not have anticipated were the information and cyber attacks. These were the key factors behind the operation's success. Without them, Israel would not have been able to infiltrate and eliminate Iran's highest military leaders, including the commanders of the Revolutionary Guard's Air Force, air defense, and drone attack units, who oversaw the country's most dangerous ballistic missile forces. China expert Yuan Hongbing revealed that the Chinese government had completely underestimated Israel's ability to eliminate Iran's military leadership within 24 to 36 hours, including the precise elimination of the country's most prominent nuclear weapons scientist. This intelligence shocked the Chinese government. Before the strikes on June 13th, Iran's command chain had already been severed. The radar network was blinded, and air defense early warning systems failed. The military and political leadership were unable to coordinate a counterattack. Before Israel's large-scale airstrike on June 13th, China had been overly confident in its technology. Beijing's proudest achievement was providing Iran with the MIM-23 radar system. Chinese military experts had repeatedly claimed this radar could effectively detect stealth aircraft, including the F-35, calling it a stealth killer. The reality on June 13th dealt China a heavy blow. Israeli fighter jets entered Iran with minimal resistance, and the MIM-23 radar provided by China had little to no warning capabilities. Worse, on June 14th to the 15th, Israel destroyed 2 of these MIM-23 systems. In fact, Israel had cracked the radar's digital code back in March. In the days following Israel's initial strike, Iran launched 32 Meteor 3 missiles, which contained Chinese data links. These data links were provided by Pakistan's Red Flag 19 air defense system, deployed along the Iranian border. Yet the U.S. Iron Dome system, still in testing, intercepted every missile. The key factor was not the strength of the defense system, but that the U.S. had completely cracked the Chinese missiles guidance system and data link. No matter how the missile's trajectory shifted, the U.S. could calculate its path in real time and intercept it in advance. UN Hongbin revealed that the first wave of Israeli strikes on June 13th prompted a swift policy shift in China. After the attacks, China's internal response was immediate. The Central Committee's Secretariat instructed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to prepare global embassies for a diplomatic battle, condemning Israel's aggression against Iran and firmly supporting Iran's anti-aggression stance. Just 36 hours later, the directive shifted suddenly, and all propaganda outlets pivoted to a peace theme, calling for reconciliation between the parties. It was a dramatic reversal, leaving many stunned by the change. The U.S. Hammer of Midnight, June 21st. The details of the U.S. operation against Iran have been discussed in briefings by U.S. military officials, with the general outline clear, though some specifics remain undisclosed. 7 B-2 bombers launched their attack from the Atlantic, flying towards the Mediterranean and eventually reaching Iran. During the flight, U.S. satellite data was reportedly turned off, including Elon Musk's Starlink satellite network, with no response being sent back. Currently, the U.S. has approximately 300 satellites in space, and Musk's company operates nearly 8,000. Other countries have around 2,000 satellites combined, so the presence of this bomber squadron largely went undetected by other nations. Additionally, the airspace belonged to NATO, which, under U.S. orders, had all members block flight data and maintain silence on responses, ensuring the squadron went unnoticed until it reached the eastern Mediterranean. Upon entering the U.S. Central Command area, covering the Middle East, control of the operation was handed over to the U.S. commanders. At that point, F-22, F-35, and electronic warfare aircraft like the Growler, along with F-15 and F-16 fighters, took off. A total of about 110 aircraft formed up and bombers in Iraqi airspace near Iran for escort and support. The bombers split into two groups. 6 planes targeted Iran's Fordo nuclear facility, while one headed for Natanz. Meanwhile, 3 waves of fighters aimed at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Each team had an electronic warfare plane to disable ground radar and anti-missile systems, F-22 fighters to intercept Iranian aircraft and missiles, and F-35 planes equipped with precision-guided bombs and advanced electronic warfare capabilities supported by F-16s and F-15s. Simultaneously, or perhaps even earlier, the U.S. launched about 30 Tomahawk missiles from attack submarines stationed in the Arabian Sea, with 24 targeting the Isfahan nuclear site and 6 aimed at Natanz. Around 2 a.m. on Sunday, 6 B-2 bombers dropped 12 GBU-57 massive bunker buster bombs on Fordo, with 6 bombs hitting each of the 6 designated entry points. These bombs weighed nearly 14 tons in total, with an explosive payload around 2 tons, and the rest of the weight designed to penetrate 60 meters of reinforced concrete. Despite only containing 2 tons of explosives, the high-tech bombs produced a blast equivalent to 200 tons of TNT, leading to significant collapses in Fordo's underground facilities. Around the same time, a B-2 bomber dropped 2 more GBU-57 bombs on Natanz, while approximately 30 fighter jets dropped 30 JDAM precision-guided bombs on the ground facilities, each weighing around 1 ton. The majority of Natanz above-ground and surface structures were destroyed. After completing their bombing runs, the 7 B-2 bombers, escorted by numerous fighter jets, began exiting Iranian airspace. What's most alarming is that no one knew about the bombing. No country detected it, not even Russia or Iran, and many radars in China's Xinjiang and Tibet regions failed to pick up any signals. China claims its high-altitude infrared radar systems can detect stealth aircraft like the B-2, F-35, and F-22. So the question arises, how did China's radar fail to detect U.S. bombers flying 17 hours across the Atlantic with several mid-air refueling sessions as they entered and left the Middle East on June 21st? The U.S. bomber fleet crossed the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and several Middle Eastern countries with support from a large number of fighter jets. After completing their mission, the bombers returned along the same route. Such an operation requires careful management of satellite and other detection systems. This highlights the US's control over space and air, both in terms of hardware and software. As US generals have stated, there were no threats from the ground or the air when the US fleet entered and left Iranian airspace. This further confirms the statements made by President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that the US now controls Iranian airspace. Xi Jinping's anger. Sources reveal that upon learning the US bombers had entered and exited Iranian airspace undetected, Xi Jinping angrily questioned the military. Where's your high-altitude infrared radar? You couldn't detect F-35 or the B-2. How are we supposed to fight the US like this? We can't even begin to compete. What left Xi completely stunned was that the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed no abnormal radiation was found after 3 nuclear facilities were destroyed. The US military not only destroyed underground nuclear facilities with precision, but also managed to fully control nuclear radiation during the explosions. This technology is something China has yet to develop, remaining at the conceptual stage. Xi now faces a political crisis. For years, he has focused on military technology investment while allowing economic decline. Now that these investments have failed, the question arises, how will he maintain his position in the party? If he doesn't step down, what will happen? This represents a significant strategic misstep. Xi Jinping's approach to the situation has been called into question. One notable aspect of the operation was the strategic deception employed by President Trump. Before Israel's surprise attack on Iran on June 13, President Trump had repeatedly expressed his desire to continue negotiations with Iran and publicly warned Israel not to disrupt the diplomatic process between the US and Iran. This statement lulled Iran's leadership into a false sense of security. Tehran believed that Israel would be restricted by Trump and would not act impulsively in the short term. As a result, high-ranking officials gathered for a secret meeting, only to be precisely targeted and decapitated. This is the first strategic deception by Trump and Israel against Iran. The second deception took place before the US military launched its strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. After giving the order to proceed, Trump told the media that he would wait 2 more weeks before deciding whether to take action. He also stated that he would wait until the last second to make a decision on whether to strike. This statement led Iran into a deeper strategic miscalculation. Iran believed that Trump might be constrained by domestic and international pressures and would struggle to make a firm decision. The mention of 2 weeks also misled Iran into thinking that, like the previous 60 days comment, the US would continue to follow a diplomatic cycle. As a result, Iran's leadership believed they had 2 more weeks to prepare, but the hammer of midnight struck earlier than expected, catching them off guard. This series of strategic deceptions by Trump and Israel not only successfully misled Iran, but also left Xi Jinping extremely concerned. Analysts believe that the same tactics might eventually be used against China. Trump also introduced a new tactic. He made it clear that regime change is no longer politically incorrect. The real correct approach is to ensure that the people of each country have what they believe is right. For instance, making Iran great again became a new slogan, MIGA. Therefore, for countries that support terrorism, regime change is not only possible but also justified. This creates a solid legal and public framework for future actions against the Chinese Communist Party. President Trump's message is clear. Only strength can deter adversaries and prevent them from acting recklessly. This creates the possibility for peace. While China, Russia, and Iran may join forces, when the US decides to take action, they will all be at risk. The disruption of energy lifelines, the core battlefield of oil. The June strike wasn't just a blow to Iran's nuclear program, it also deeply alarmed the Chinese leadership due to the disruption of energy lifelines and the loss of leverage in the internationalization of the yuan. Over the past decade, Iran has played a fourfold role in China's strategic calculations. In the context of US-Iran confrontation, China has used Iran to bypass the US dollar-based settlement system, securing oil at substantial discounts. According to the International Energy Agency's March 2025 oil market report, Iran's daily oil exports in 2024 averaged 1.6 million barrels, with nearly all of it flowing to China. This amounts to 79.4 million tons, or 14.4% of China's total crude oil imports for the year, which were 553 million tons. Another important detail comes from China's customs data. In 2024, Malaysia exported 500 million barrels of oil to China, even though Malaysia's own production was just 570,000 barrels per day. S&P Global notes that approximately 60% or 300 million barrels of that oil was Iranian transshipment oil. Adding the 40.8 million tons of Iranian oil transshipped through Malaysia, Iran's share of China's oil imports rises to 22%. After this conflict, the US will gain absolute control over two major energy sectors, oil, including both Middle Eastern oil and US oil, giving the US an undeniable voice in global oil pricing and nuclear energy. Trump even tweeted, "To the Energy Department, drill baby drill, and I mean now." He also tweeted, "Everyone keep oil prices down, I'm watching." This shows his control over oil price management. Though Iran is not as dominant in oil production as Saudi Arabia, its influence with OPEC and its veto power over regional oil pricing policies provide China with valuable negotiating leverage. Through covert support of Iran in opposition to other OPEC members, China could challenge Saudi Arabia's pro-US stance. This allowed China to secure more favorable oil quotas while limiting Europe's access. All of that has now been erased by the hammer of midnight. If Trump continues this approach, the disruption of energy technologies will largely fall under US and allied control. China has lost its most important energy partner. It will now be completely vulnerable in terms of energy security. After the airstrike, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth addressed the media. He made it clear, anything can happen in conflict, and we acknowledge that, but the scope of this was intentionally limited. This means that within Iranian airspace, the US could have done anything, but the US chose restraint and was merely testing the waters. This wasn't to show only Iran, but to show the world. The US has a power to destroy entire systems, but it chose to spare Iran, letting them know that America sets the rules of this game.